recent superhero film in the DCEU starring Zachary Levi, Mark Strong, Jaimin Hunzu, and among many others. It's a story of a boy named Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, where he's trying to find his biological mother in the streets of Philadelphia, but is unsuccessful in doing so, is taken to a foster home, and then stumbles upon a magical wizard who grants him the powers of the gods. Whenever he says Shazam, he becomes the adult superhero Shazam, played by Zachary Levi. Wait a second. I got the wrong shirt on here. Hold on a second. Shazam! Cool, huh? I am sorry. I couldn't resist. So, let's talk about Shazam. I'm sorry that it took a while for me to review this. I just never got around to it when I first saw this, but I watched it on Blu-ray again last night, and I'm happy to say that this movie still holds up for me. I wouldn't call it my favorite in the DCEU. I would say that Wonder Woman is still the best one for me, but Shazam is a really good time. It feels like in many ways a breath of fresh air, as people have pointed out, amongst the other superhero films that we've gotten in the last couple years, like Endgame, Into the Spider-Verse, and so on. This feels like something you would see from the late 1970s, like the Richard Donner Superman, or the early 2000s with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, but obviously retrofitted for today. Yes, there are some references and nods to the DCEU, but it doesn't rely on them so much. This is more focused on the characters of Billy Batson and his roommate Freddie Freeman and the main villain Thaddeus Savannah. If I say Dr. Zhivago, it's inevitable. And in case you haven't seen this by now, we are going to be talking about some spoilers. You've been warned. As I said earlier, Billy Batson is a young orphan running around the streets of Philly, trying to find his biological mother whom he got separated from as a little boy, but unfortunately hasn't had any success in doing so, and is then taken to a foster home, which he's obviously not too thrilled about. And he strikes up a friendship with his roommate, Freddie Freeman, played by Jack Dylan Grazer. And one day at school, after standing up to a group of bullies that pick on Freddie, he runs into a subway train and manages to get away, but then is transported to the Rock of Eternity, where he meets the wizard, Shazam, played by Jaimin Hunzu. Star-Lord, man. Who? Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw? Sorry, wrong movie. And this wizard Shazam has been searching for someone who is pure of heart and it can carry on the power of Shazam after losing certain items of his in his lair, like the 7 deadly sins and the Eye of Sin, to Thaddeus Savannah. Due to this dire situation, he tells Billy, look, I have a really strict screening process while I do this, but I'm out of time, so now you're the hero. Just say my name and my powers are yours. And whenever he says Shazam, he becomes the adult superhero, played by Zachary Levi. So where do I start with Shazam? Well, let's talk about the obvious main attraction here, Zachary Levi. You might know him as Chuck Bartowski from the show Chuck. I had heard of the show back when it came out, but I never watched it, but I knew who the guy was by name. I'm not the first person to say this, but Zachary Levi is terrific here. He perfectly embodies the spirit of a child who's never had anything good happen to him ever in his life. Similar to Tom Hanks in the movie Big, I really buy the fact that this is a kid in a grown man's body. Certain things that he would say and do in certain situations, I could easily see a 14 or 15-year-old kid doing something like that when he's granted all these powers. And Zachary Levi's performance is completely 100% realistic, and he has this very youthful vigor about him that not too many actors out there have. Hopefully he doesn't lose that anytime soon or ever, because he really, really kills it in this movie. He is perfect. Whatever you think about anything else, he holds this film together, and my God, does he do that flawlessly. And his counterpart, Asher Angel, does a really good job too. Kid actors I'm usually a little iffy on, but he does his part very well in the scenes that he's in. And his interplay with his roommate, Freddie Freeman, played by Jack Dylan Grazer, perfect. Is so well realized. It could potentially be a bit risky because Freddie's a bit obnoxious and talks very fast and is really easily excitable because he's a younger kid. For some reason though, David F. Sandberg found the right notes to strike with this kid and with the other actors in this movie too. Not just the interplay between him and Asher Angel, the chemistry between Jack Dylan Grazer and Zachary Levi also feels legitimate. Like there's one sequence where Shazam is trying to figure out how to use his powers, where he tests his invincibility, his ability to fly, him being impervious to flame, all the while with Don't Stop Me Now by Queen playing over it too. You can't get any better than that. And one of the funniest scenes in this movie is when Billy realizes that being in an adult body, he can actually go out to a convenience store to buy beer, and it leads to this great line.
I'd like to purchase some of your finest beer, please.
The way he says that line, the look on his face, his posture, and the girl's reaction to it, wow. Sorry about your window, but you're welcome for not getting robbed.
To fighting bad guys.
Yeah.
That tastes like actual vomit.
Also, can we just sit back and appreciate the fact that Shazam takes place in the city of Philadelphia?
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
No mention of the Eagles, though. Oh well. But at least they're on the Rocky steps. I can see why Rocky trained so hard to get up here. This view's pretty dope. And then, of course, there's the lightning with my hands, which leads to him accidentally electrocuting the bus, which almost kills the people on board.
Dude, did you see that?
Yeah, you electrocuted a bus and almost killed these people.
And then I caught it!
I swear, that is optimism up to 11. And that's where the villain Thaddeus Savannah comes in, which, let's talk about him. Thaddeus Savannah is played by Mark Strong. You guys will probably know him from the first Sherlock Holmes, Kingsman: The Secret Service, and was he in Green Lantern? I've never seen Green Lantern, but I heard he played a character named Sinestro. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mark Strong plays his character very smoothly and very calmly. A good performance overall, but my problem with Thaddeus Savannah, this character does have a legitimate backstory. They set him up fairly well earlier on in the opening scene where he's a young boy on his way to his grandpa's house with his father and brother. And he's not really viewed favorably by either of them. Then he gets transported to the Rock of Eternity where he meets the wizard Shazam. But then he's tempted by the 7 deadly sins and tries to steal the Eye of Sin and is then deemed unworthy. And he's transported back to his car, tries to figure out what's going on, which then causes an accident which results in his father being paralyzed. And both his father and brother blame it on him. And then there's a huge time gap between when we see him as a child and then when we later see him as an adult played by Mark Strong, where he's trying to figure out the phenomenon of people experiencing the same thing. So we're supposed to believe that he's had the exact same grudge about the exact same thing for all these years, since 1974 up until 2019. I feel like there would be more to it than that. Now, this is not a villain where you don't really understand his motivation. You do. I think the character needed more development. I think there needed to be more emphasis on why exactly he is the way he is. I do like how that Savannah is meant to be a dark reflection of Billy Batson. As kids, they were both treated very unfavorably. Savannah uses that experience in a negative way and uses it to strike harm on other people. Billy Batson, on the other hand, through a series of certain events, when he has his great power and responsibility moment, that he realizes that he could use his powers for the greater good. And I think it's a really good idea to have them be like mirror images of each other, kind of like Batman and the Joker. But another problem I have with Savannah, his endgame isn't exactly clear. Yes, he wants the powers of Shazam, but what would he do with them when he gets them? It's never explained. Since I mentioned the rivalry between the two, Billy Batson, as he's relishing in his powers and his fame and glory across the city, he starts to experience the true meaning of family when he talks with his one foster sibling who's recently been accepted by a college out on the West Coast. And as Shazam, he awkwardly tries to console her, but then basically says, family's only for people who are lonely. Look out for number 1. You. And it's only when Freddy calls him out on what he's doing, after missing out on his opportunity to help him stand up to the school bullies, that Billy realizes he's been very egotistical. And his encounter with Savannah scares the crap out of him, and he starts to doubt whether or not he can be a hero to help other people. And then he later returns home, and his foster siblings have figured out his secret, and they tell him where his mother is. He goes off to find her, and unfortunately is disappointed to find out that she never looked for him. We saw a flashback with him and his mom when he was a little boy, and everything seemed to be really nice and perfect with his mother, but that turns out that's what he wishes was the case, or that he was hoping it would be. Because when we later see her, and we see that flashback again, she actually turned out to be a teen mom whose heart really wasn't in it to be a mom. And then when she got separated from him, she saw the cops watching over him, and she decided that they can do a better job taking care of you than I can. And she didn't even bother to go look for him. And then you also hear another guy yelling from behind the door, "Who is there? Who's that at the door? What are you doing out there?" She's in a very abusive relationship. Billy is clearly crushed by this. What he was hoping for is not there. It's a lost cause, and he accepts his foster family as his new family. And then he goes off to save them from Savannah once he realizes what's going on. You could say that this movie is a very disposable comedy, and I don't necessarily think that's a negative or something bad. Yes, this movie is really funny, but there's also a nice undercurrent of emotion in there, with the themes of family, using your past experiences as a child and becoming a better person. Not done in the most revolutionary way, but I think it's done very effectively. Similar to the 2002 Spider-Man film. Not the most groundbreaking, but it's very emotionally effective. And I think David F. Sandberg and the writers did that flawlessly. Sandberg's direction I also think is very skillfully done. There's not a whole lot of amazing action in here, but that's not really the point of this movie. The point is the characters, which is really nice to see in today's superhero market where there's a lot of big, epic, actiony superhero stuff. Don't get me wrong, I do love Endgame, but it's nice to see something a little more smaller scale than that. And there's a lot of creepy imagery in here too, with the 7 deadly sins, eating alive the board members, and killing Savannah's father, like the raptors in Jurassic Park. Parents, advise your children before you watch this with them. Considering David F. Sandberg's history with horror films, it's not really surprising with this one. Kind of like Sam Raimi with the Spider-Man movies. And let's get the obvious out of the way here. I really like Zachary Levi in this role, but what if Tobey Maguire played Shazam instead? Oh well, you don't always get what you want in life. So Billy and his foster siblings go on the run to this nearby carnival, and after being trapped by Savannah and is about ready to give up his powers, but then remembers something that the original Shazam wizard told him, about not just someone of a pure heart, but more than one person would take up the thrones of the wizards. And Billy realizes that he can share his powers with his foster family, which leads to the best scene in the whole movie. Say my name. Billy! What? No. Say the name that I say to turn into this guy. I'm not familiar with the comics. I knew barely any of this stuff going in, but when I realized what was going on, it was so awesome. And it just left a huge smile on my face. Guys, I don't believe in violence, but I think we should kick this guy's butt, like, really hard. And the adult version of Freddie Freeman, Adam Brody from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Oh look, more desert. Keep it in your pocket. What was I supposed to do, frame it? So Billy and his siblings managed to figure out Savannah's weakness by removing the eye of sin from Savannah's eye. Billy and Savannah go out into the middle of downtown Philly while the rest of the siblings fight off the 7 deadly sins. And also, this movie does a really good job as being a satire on the superhero genre, which they show Savannah and Shazam from about a mile apart from each other.
Slow.
Are you making some of my big evil guy speech right now or something? You're like a mile away from me right now.
Unusual, but effective. So he manages to get the eye out of Savannah's body, and the 7 deadly sins are put back into their rightful place in the lair. And Billy and the rest of his brothers and sisters take up the throne of the wizardry. And Billy has finally accepted his place in this new family when he leads them in a word of prayer. And it ends with Billy as Shazam, keeping a promise to Freddy by showing up to have lunch with him, as well as his other foster siblings, and bringing in a special guest to lunch as well. I knew the way they shot that scene, that was not Henry Cavill. It was an obvious body double. That being said, it was still a cool moment. And then there's 2 post-credit scenes with Savannah in a prison cell drawing all these wizard symbols. And then he meets this caterpillar character called Mr. Mind, talking about the other 7 realms or whatnot. It's obviously setting up future sequels, but without it being too on the nose. And the post-credit scene, yeah, I'm sure, because there's plenty of fish in the sea. Of course it's not real. I can't talk to fish. Even if I could, well, honestly, what could we do with that that's cool?
I don't know, maybe command an army of billions in the ocean?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not that cool.
My thoughts exactly. So overall, I think Shazam is a really good time. Not my favorite in the DCEU. I think Wonder Woman's still the best one, but this is still a good step back in the right direction for DC, and I would really like to see a sequel. Warner Brothers, DC, go ahead with Shazam 2. I will pay money to see it. Those are my thoughts on Shazam. What did you guys think of Shazam? Did you love it, like it, think it's alright, or do you hate it? Whatever the case is, comment below and tell me your thoughts, and I will see you all again very soon.